far. My name is Hasan Habib. I'm the CEO of Designist, and we design meaningful experiences that people have with products and services. And what I'm here to talk about today is where design meets business. Now, we've heard a lot about user-centeredness and meaningful experiences and co-creation. In some ways, this could be a lot of summary of what we've heard so far. But what I'm really here to talk about is how does it actually finally affect the business? So we've heard this saying, good design is good business. And how do we really evaluate what that really means? So there was a study by Envision that was conducted. It was done with 2,200 companies across 23 different industries. And there were 77 companies involved in this. And here's some data to share with you of what a design mature company looks like versus a company that's not so design-centric. They look at design, but it is not at the core of what they really do. So from a revenue perspective, the more design mature companies had 4x. That means they're making 4 times more money than what a normal company that doesn't really focus on design is. Number 2, cost savings. So they're saving 5 times more costs when they're following a proper design process. This could be because, हमारे ज़माने में everything has to go to the top to make a decision. And there's a lot of back and forth in that, and that can waste a lot of time. So if processes aren't being followed, things are bouncing around, and naturally with time, costs increase. Then time to market. Because of these bureaucratic ways of doing things, time to market for design mature companies is 6x. So that means they're also making money faster than other organizations are. And lastly, for the startup space, this is a big number. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, this is something really valuable for the people who are running businesses, and then seeing yourself as a designer also in working different places for making a case for design, where valuations of companies are 26x. So that's a serious number. So when you think about businesses, what are they really looking at doing? They're looking at increasing their profits, like let's make some money. But in addition to this, that's not the only thing they're looking at. They're looking at how do we actually create value and impact for those customers. And at the bottom line, what are businesses doing?
Solving a problem.
Yes, they're trying to solve problems. Thank you for that. But how does business look at design? What would a standard business, if they would look at design, what would they say? Huh? They look down. But what would they say? Like when they bring a designer in the room, what do they say?
Aesthetics, beauty, looks of it.
Make it sexy, right? Make it look pretty. That's the first thing that they come to mind when they think about design. The other thing they say, it's expensive, right? It costs a lot. राइट डिज़ाइनर को क्यों लेके आए या एजेंसी को क्यों लेके आए, बहुत महंगा है, इस कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट से ही करा दो, इसको थोड़ा फोटोशॉप आता है.
मेरी बेटी ने घर बनाया था उस तरह की.
हाँ, या कैनवस पे बना दें, राइट, कैनवा पे. The other thing is we can do it later. It's an afterthought. There's a big risk to that. They're like, okay, engineering will do it. Let's call in the designer later. वो अच्छा बना देगा, right? They're thinking of it as an afterthought. And when it comes to design thinking or thinking of design as a process, they think of it as a lot of jargon. They just workshop it, or they put sticky notes and they call these fancy models. And it's a lot of jargon. It's hard for them to understand. And how can we change this? How can we change the perception and really communicate what the value of design is? And I like to look at it in these 2 ways. There's design on both sides. Can you guys tell me the difference between the 2? The D, right? There's one known as big D design, and the second one is known as small d design. So what does big D design really refer to? It refers to that problem-solving methodology of, say, design thinking and things like that. Small d design is the visual representation of that process. And they both, not to say they both are very equally important. Not to say that the people who are pushing pixels, they're very, very important, because that's At the end of the day, that's what the humans interact with. So if you have to break it down, big D design covers research, framing, ideation, strategy. And then the small d design is looking at function, form, and how the humans interact. And if you have to further break it down, the big D design is focusing on that final outcome. Like, what are we hoping to achieve through design? And then small d design is what is the output from that research and ideation. So these are two things to consider when we're designing. And how does this, let's share some case studies of how this works. So let's take Abhi. Have you guys heard of Abhi? Yes. So when Abhi didn't have a design team, they came to us. They had their engineering in place, they had their business in place. And then naturally, design was an afterthought. And they were like, let's do this. This is running in other markets. And there's a great business opportunity for do this in Pakistan. They're essentially giving salaries to people, like advanced salaries. So let's share the example of Khadim Bhai, right? For those who work at Designers, you guys know who he is, or if you visited. Khadim Bhai is our office help. His salary is 30,000 rupees. He's married with 2 kids. And essentially, he's a person who needs access to finance. And working during the month, you may not get access to that finance at any given time. So what Abhi is doing is solving a problem of allowing you to have your money before the month ends. So they said, okay, this is what's happening globally. As Gulrez mentioned, you do all the practices and you know all the apps and you test everything. And they said, just do it this way. And we did it this way and we built it. And we said, okay, now we need to test it, because their main target audience and the outcome they wanted to achieve was for gray and blue collar workers. And we said, look, we need to test it before we put it out for development, because you do all of this and then you put it out and it's a big risk. So when we put it in the hands of Khadim had no idea how it worked. He was just like, kya karoon, right? What is this? And we had to go back to the drawing board. We were like, no, we can't just roll this out this way because the development is expensive. So we went back and we redesigned it. And after we redesigned it, Khadim Bhai is happy. It made it a lot easier for him to do it, and he ended up being one of the largest borrowers of Abhi, which in itself is a wicked problem because borrowing too much is also a problem. So we had to have a conversation with him. But the point is that user experience for him became very, very easy. What was the impact that this actually happened for Abhi within a year? Abhi managed to raise $17 million at a valuation of $90 million. So that's a big, big raise during the startup boom during 2021. Let's talk about another case study where the outcomes are really important. HBL came to us, we're like, hey, we're becoming really digital now. And we have this brick and mortar branch. And the insight that we again got for Gulrez, cash is not going anywhere. And they're putting even more digital technology in these spaces. But they said, hey, how do we actually move people to other channels? Because it's putting too much load on our branches. So we did a study across Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, 12 branches. We spoke to 250 customers and about 65 branch employees to really understand what are the needs and motivations of people going to the branch. And this is what a typical branch can look like. This, as you can see, the people in line are not very happy. The guy on the machine is slightly a little happier. And we looked at 6 different transactions, from bill payments to balance inquiry. People would literally go to ask their balance at the branch, account statement request. But let's look at one specific use case. They were coming to do their bills. And we know from the mobile apps, a bill payment takes how long? I think from what Gulrez was saying, it takes like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, somebody will interact with their app, maybe 2-3 times a month. How long do you think it takes to do a bill payment at a branch? Half an hour, 20 minutes at least. And then add the driving time and the waiting time. And then if you have to do a deposit, forget about it. Filling that deposit form is a nightmare on its own. So do you guys know why people are coming to the branch to do a bill payment?
Don't trust the app.
Huh?
Don't trust the app.
Don't trust the app, okay. Anything else?
They don't have the app.
They don't have the app, okay.
They want a stamp. They don't know.
They want the stamp. Who said that? Salman. Yes, they want that stamp. So when you end up completing your bill payment, वो एक मोड़ लगता है, एक stamp. And for them, that's very, very, very important. And we were like, okay, why don't we just introduce a digital stamp? And that's exactly what HBL did. Like, they introduced a digital stamp, and the transaction amounts on bill payments went significantly higher. Addition to that, the other interventions that we did on channel migration helped transfer about 2 million customers away from the branches to digital channels. There are 90% year-on-year growth on digital transactions itself, and the cost reduction for the bank for specific transactions was reduced by 78%. So again, when you're thinking about outcome-specific goals, it's even as simple as just putting a stamp. You don't have to redesign everything. So simplicity is also key in thinking through that. Now, those were two business cases. We can also think of organizations that don't make money that still need user goals and outcomes as well. So when I say business, it could be interchanged with organizations as well. Anybody familiar with Pakistan Sign Language? I mean, we have Zaid in the room, we worked with him on the tech side. By a show of hands, who thinks that sign language is universal? I think it's universal. Yeah, most people. But it turns out that a lot of regions and countries have their own sign language. We didn't know this before getting into this project. And what Pakistan Sign Language wanted to do was they wanted to digitize the sign language, put it on a mini computer called an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, actually, Raspberry Pi. Did you see that sitar? So they had a mini computer, I think they were using an Arduino, but it's similar to that. It's this little mini computer, and they said, we want to put the entire sign language on this, and we want to roll it out nationwide. We were like, okay, great. They were like, okay, they've done pretty much all the tech, and they were like, okay, let's think about design now. So they called us in, and we had to pitch against other companies. And we said, hey, this is the approach we want to take. We're not going to just design this. We're going to say, hey, we want to spend time with schools. We want to understand the role that sign language plays in the lives of people, in the lives of teachers. And then we're going to do this. Even though our quote was twice as high as the other companies. I think Umair is also in the room. We were against you at that time. We still won the project because they liked the approach, because they realized that design has a specific value. So we spent time understanding the role of sign language, and then we rolled out this new interface, and then I think it went around Pakistan, and 1,000 units were distributed nationwide. They had done it over 90 cities. 190 schools benefit from this, and the beneficiaries were over 60,000 people, including students, teachers, and parents. And this also won 2 awards, a WISE award and another Pasha award. But the important thing, when we come back to the word outcome, what was the outcome that we're hoping to achieve? The output was this great digital technology, but the outcome that we all take for granted is the ability for me to stand here and speak and for you to understand me. There are people in the most remote parts of Pakistan who have a child who's deaf, and they can't communicate with them. And now through this learning unit, the parents have the ability to learn the sign language, the teachers have the ability to be able to teach better, and essentially you're allowing for communication to happen that could not have happened before. So this was very, very impactful. And I think this is probably one of our most favorite projects that we've done. So how do we start changing this perception around design and thinking about the value it delivers? What can we do? I think the first and most important thing to understand is what is the role that design is playing in the organization, and what is the role that you are playing as a designer in understanding that role. So there are 4 ways we can look at it. One is external, part, core, integral. So when we're looking at it from an external or part of the company, essentially design is being really thought of from an output perspective or from a commodity. Ye designer ko bas de do, bana ke de dega. Or let's just hire an agency to come and build this for us. But on the second side, you have on the core side, where now design starts playing a role as a strategic tool to actually work towards outcomes. And then when it becomes integral, that means that every person in that organization needs to start understanding and believes in the value of design. So this, you need to keep in mind, you're moving from output to outcome. So as a designer, it's really important for you to recognize what is that role that you're playing within that organization. Are you just working on output, or you're actually working to strategic business goals? This is something that Arsalan earlier was also saying, is about designers coming out of their shells and realizing the impact that they're actually having on the overall organization, not just making screens. So what are some things, there are 5 points that you can take to make this better? I think the number one thing is communicating the perception of design. And somebody said, Irfan, right? You said, I'm not going to call it game design, I'm going to call it user experience. I would say don't even call it user experience. I say don't even use the word design. Arslan talked about this guy called Peter Murhaus around org design for design orgs. And I'm stealing this from him. He says use design as a Trojan horse. Just slide it in there. Because when you use the word design, most people associate it with output-driven things. So it's about how do you repackage it, and whatever your organization, you need to figure out the strategy for that organization, because the minute you use the word design, they're already going in a different direction. So how do you use strategy, social sciences, philosophy, all these different aspects that help design come together, and you silently package it. And as he also said, get the basics right, show that you're a good designer, and then slowly push the needle a little bit. Number two is it's really important to have a methodology. You can use design thinking, service design, agile, lean, but have some kind of process. And stay true to that process and get buy-in from everybody from that process, so you know the methods that you're using to finally reach that outcome. Number three, evidence-driven design. It is essential that you have data to back up whatever design decisions you're making, be it quantitative, be it qualitative. Even Sahel was saying storytelling. It's a great, great method to use when sharing insights on what users needs. And why this is important is because we all know when we work for larger organizations in Pakistan, there's usually a seat sitting on the top. Or there's a senior person in your team. And then they usually just say, usne bola to hame karna hai, versus saying, hey, this is the reason we're doing it. And often when things fail, people blame each other. And when you have this point of truth, which is your insights, it's very difficult to battle with that, because the data shows us, and this is why we've made these decisions. Number four, we've talked a lot about this, user-centeredness. Put that user at the heart of that experience. Really think through their experience and how they feel. Start building empathy. Be curious. And lastly, it's about co-creation and collaboration. Everybody brings a unique perspective to this table. And it's about leveraging these expertise of everyone. It's about working together. And by doing this, you're getting more buy-in from the different departments, such as IT or business or marketing. And you get a sense of collective ownership. And when you do this, you're saving time, you're going to market faster, you're hopefully increasing revenue. And if not, at least maza to aa raha hai. So one last thing to remember for designers is that you guys are facilitators of this design process. Take yourself out of your own self. Put yourself into the shoes of your end users. It's not about your opinion or what you think is best, but it's about what is best for the person that you're designing for. So my last thoughts, if you fail to design, you have designed to fail. Thank you.